Washington, and welcome back to another episode of the Bantaba Dialogue. It's with me, Ibrahim Asonko, and today we're starting slightly, late. I was meant to have some gentlemen as I advertised, but I do not want to continue to keep you all waiting when I had given you a time in terms of when we intended to start, but all of them are not here yet. I was meant to have, excuse me, Melvin and also Omar Malmo Sambou, both of them to join me to talk about the nomination of the Inspector General of Police for the Father Network Heroes Award ceremony that's coming up. And I've sent both of them the link. I haven't seen them yet. I'm hoping that they will join me as soon as practicable, so we can have this conversation. But if they don't, this is a bantaba. We can have other conversations that are going on in the Gambia too, and I'm happy to adjust accordingly. But I'm just gonna wait for them a little bit to see whether any of them would come up. Again, we're meant to have Omar Malmo together with Melvin with me. I've sent both of them the link to join me for us to have a conversation on the ongoing IGP nomination controversy for the Heroes Award. But major follow, so I'm just gonna give them a couple of minutes to see if they join me. That was also meant to have a surprise appearance for Sarjo Barrow, who is an attorney here and a former judge, that he was meant to join us to talk about the recent immigration policy from U.S. Immigration Service, to break all of that down for us. So, again, I apologize for the late start. I hope my colleagues can join me as soon as possible for us to have a dialogue. But if they don't, then we're going to adjust because there's definitely a lot to go through. There's a lot to have conversations about too. Malmo fella a message real quick, so I'm just gonna listen to that and then we're going to continue. So stick around, all of you, and we will be right back. Anyway, I just got notification from Malmo that he will join me in a bit. Melvin, I don't know. I've sent him the link a while back. Hopefully, he's also able to join me. But if you're in the comment section too, you want to come up to have a conversation on some of the issues that we want to talk about too. Feel free to leave a message in the comment section, and I'll send you a link to join us. Because again, Saturdays are mostly bantabas, and I like to open this for all of us to be able to have conversations and dialogues and things that are going on in the Gambia. Now, obviously, there are big things happening, especially from our neighboring country, Senegal, which we had intended to talk about. Also, here in the United States, just as of yesterday, a big immigration policy came out that radically shifts in terms of adjustment of status in the United States and what that meant. And I've invited my good brother, Sarjo Barrow to break that down for us and what that means. And together with the IGP nomination controversy that also we know is shaping the conversations around our social media. So there's a lot to talk about. So if you're definitely here and you want to be part of that dialogue, I don't mind. Just send me a message or leave a message in the comment section and we'll make it happen. Let me message Saja real quick and see one more time. Okay. So Sajo will join us in about 10 minutes and then, we'll try to have this conversation going. But again, thank you all for being here once again. Thank you for being part of the dialogue, being part of the conversation. I think there are important things to talk about, and I've tried to bring the people that really matter because, my opinions don't matter so much, but the people that really matter that have expertise on certain areas, puri nanang, to break certain things down for us. So it is my hope that they will join me as soon as possible. If they don't, we'll still make it work. But enough respect. Seku, thank you for being here. Thank you for being here. But again, there's a lot of things going on. Yesterday, I conducted a TikTok live, and we had a dialogue about the viral video that accuses Gambian men of being lazy compared to our West African counterparts. And I thought that was pretty interesting. There are a lot of people that share different perspectives as to what they think, whether there is any substance to what the individual said, or whether that was just an overgeneralization without substance. In fact, whether there is any evidence to suggest that Gambians are lazy, among other things. So I really enjoyed that, and it was also my hope that today that we could have some bit of that conversation about what do you think, Gambianolu, Gambia funding kelu, Gambia keolu, are we in fact lazy compared to our other West African counterparts, or that is just a fallacy? There is no truth to it. Let me know in the comment section. But also in terms of the IGP's nomination, considering IGP is being the one that oversaw the rearrest of Usenu Bojang when Usenu was acquitted and discharged recently, and now the same IGP of police is being nominated for an award, for the Heroes Award. And depending on who is arguing it, I think people have different sides of looking at it. There are some who will tell you that is selective outrage, in terms of just not talking about other issues, and we're talking about the IGP's nomination. And there are some who will tell you there is no way on earth that this IGP should be the one to really win an award or even be considered for an award. So I thought that's an important conversation that we could have. But also, what is happening in our neighboring country, Senegal, is pretty telling and very interesting too. Usman Sonko and Basiru Jomai Faye have finally separated, officially also dissolved the Senegalese government. And what we're seeing now, I think, is something that all of us have been expecting for a while, because it's been brewing and it has finally come to life. Because at the end of the day, this is not new, and it's not also unique to just Senegal. We've seen this happen all around Africa, including our own little Gambia, where President Barrow and his political godfather, as he described him, Dabo, had a political separation in the past, and then eventually formed his political party after starting as a political movement to what we now have as the National People's Party, which has become the biggest political force in the Gambia. So Senegal Fanang is not any different. Senegal, for a while, Kabiring, when Jomai Moy Sonko Moy Jomai, we used to remember that. And Jomai precisely became president in the name of Usman Sonko, because Usman and Jomai both, after they got released, I think campaigned together 10 days after they've been released before the elections, and eventually won the elections. And so far, I think this has been, in a way, for lack of a better word, it has been philosophized and prophesized that is going to happen. And it did end up happening finally as of Friday. I think these are, even though I think fundamentally and philosophy wise too, they all come from the same party. They all work in the private sector. And then they're all part of very important figures in PASDEF, especially Usman Sonko. And then, for a while, we've seen how their public engagements and interactions and the criticisms from people that look at Usman Sonko as, sort of somewhat a turbulent figure, this radical figure who would not bend to any form of pressure, especially from the West. And Senegal is experiencing an unprecedented amount of debt crisis, which is not entirely the fault of this current government, because they've inherited a lot of that problem. If you want to satisfy everyone out there, and you become a hypocrite. I don't even know what you're talking about, Mohammed. But Senegal is experiencing almost 100 and I think 32% to, I mean, to its GDP, which is an astronomical number, and they also have about 1.3 billion of their part of their loan scheme from the IMF that is also been stopped because of some of the findings that they've, obviously discovered from the current government, which has nothing to do with this current government, right? From the past government, which has nothing to do with this current government. So there's a lot going on in there. So it will be interesting to see what comes out in the next few days and weeks and months to come. Senegal is already in negotiation with IMF to make sure that they still have access to some of those resources to alleviate the debt crisis that they're having right now, because Senegalese are struggling, just like Gambians are struggling. I think people generally in most economies are just struggling. And Sonko, on one hand, is telling them, no, we're not going to acquiesce or agree to the conditions that the international financial institutions are giving us. And then Jamai is more statesman-like. Jamai has been, um, Omar Vele, Omar Vele,
Oh,
Inimbara,
okay.
me Senegalese la kule kachakan do maninke na sinyolo la jebe durin net.
Senegal. Ako president when Usman Sonko bay ko.
Usman Sonko la bay. So I'm not going to boy Sonko and Deni. Omar, are you here? Omar, lose the Omar la Domaninke, but hopefully he's back on. Also, Sarjo Barrow ben join na la nyata Domaninke. Jang immigration law be falling kana lungolung. Mbadungo fo ni mande kan wol kumara. It's changing at such a fast pace. It's insane. Lual be falling kana baba back if I cannot even tell you. Even for some of us who are trained legal persons, it's hard to keep up, and it's hard to understand it. And so I think to help a lot of people understand nin lual mi alon ke be falling kanting and nin policy lo immigration be milk kanting nga sa invite le prime na nam prime makoy be explain more in terms that I think a lot of people would benefit, especially more mi alon ko be Gambia ye kaitul file wala be pare na pulke la kaitul file ma file follow what all of that means, because it's a significant change. It's going to affect a lot of people. And planning, and if before anybody makes very rash decisions, I think it's important to understand what the policy means. But Omar, welcome.
Cha.
Ebe nyadi.
Dalo kuno pala ka bundam boy.
ebe
Boy.
ebe nyadi boy.
Oh, fella man, never get it.
Boy, mfele jam boy. Kota na tela.
Hey, but for device for the way will allow come from where okay, that's gone.
Yeah.
Okay.
Boy, mam Melvin jere malum fo la boy na diamu tala ba malum. He
Ah,
just gone MIA.
sana man diam.
Ah. Which is funny because it's a lot of Melvin form la cool blood and Yokono. And then now I'm just like, okay, cool. Are you guys, you want a dialogue, or you are going to publicly go after each other? What's going on?
That is no problem. Go. Kachala kumara boy. You know.
Well, love nga kasa dari world. So wala na more bringing up. So IGP la nomination is certainly where I want us to start, right? Obviously, you guys, all of you know Omar Malmo. We're here every Saturday. And the reason Omar usually joins us from the car is because Akadoko Okela, but he still makes the effort to be here on Saturday. So I just want to acknowledge how appreciative I am that he's always available for us to dialogue. But recently, controversy came up on Gambian social media as it relates to the IGP of police and other security leaders in the Gambia who are nominated for a category in the FAT Network's Heroes Award ceremony. And the Inspector General of Police currently, who also oversaw the rearrest of Usainu Bojang, is one of those figures who is nominated for that award. And so the question is the IGP deserving of that nomination, or is that nomination not warranted at all? And that's one of the things that we really want to dive into today. And we've sort of, because Malmo had a disagreement with Melvin Roberts, and we've invited Melvin to come, and he had agreed to come. But for some reason, I've sent him the link, and he's not here. He's not also communicating. I hope he's okay and everything is well with him. But for us to start the conversation from there, Malmo. If you can tell us, what is your position? Why do you make the case that IGP should not even be considered for this nomination at all? And what is your point of difference, if any, with people like Melvin who are on the other side of the argument?
All right, thank you very much. I had actually taken a decision that I'm not even talking about the police again, because the police is an institution, it's not an individual. And again, to avoid people misconstruing the perception that you hate this particular person or you dislike this person. That is very common of Gambians, that you disagree with people on a particular subject. They think it's, out of malice, out of hate, or out of dislike, or it is a constant vilification of an individual, or disagreeing to something is basically what they would refer to as simplistic thinking and all of that. Yeah, I don't get into all of that. But
Mhm.
my position is and remains that the position of the IGP is not Sidi Mutar Toure as a person. This is a phenomenal person, all rounded, a very experienced, officer who had worked, several years in the immigration, has had a lot of international experience. Even within the police force, I do believe he's, doing one thing or another that would deserve commendation. But in the generality of that position, and of course, the leadership of the police force, not him as an individual, but the trajectory of the Gambia police force, giving its leadership that accolade, it's simply and squarely, validating everything that the police are doing in the Gambia. That's my position.
Okay.
Moro, if you look at it from the 365 days that has passed, it's within those days that we saw, not just the arrest of Hussein Obojang that was illegal, and the sister, and the subsequent, return of this personnel into mile two prisons without any court order. That in itself, that alone for me, it's something that the entire police force should be giving a red flag to. So when I speak of the force, I'm not talking to an individual, because this individual heads this institution. Therefore, he is the reflection of the entire institution. So what people do on the ground, they do it on his behalf or not. He is directly or indirectly the responsible authority of that institution.
Mhm.
Now, where you give, let's say, Ngobirikama Alkalo, we are giving you an award of, the best Alkalo in the community. That means everything that is happening in Brikama is good and well. Me, along
Mhm.
Kotonya, Tonya, Tonga, Alon, we will not agree to that, because Brikama, Pujo Palke Kota, Kake Burfuri Nyami, Wole Nyinyata Jet. But the whole point now becomes that not only was this rearrest that is, in my view, illegal, and of course, the inhuman treatment of those people, their subjugation and public embarrassment. But within this period, we've seen a lot of young women being killed in the streets of the Gambia. That is not security. Now, our internal security should be led by the police force, to be specific. So now tell me, what exactly have the police force done? Count them in numbers and tell me this is deserving of a hero's award. We've seen how they continue to maltreat the young people of these countries, whose only crime are and not limited to asking for, transparency and accountability, gathering to celebrate an anniversary, going out to demand from their officials, matters relating to corruption allegations here and there. But the police continue to cramp down on them, trying to shut them down, trying to actually, make sure there are no dissenting views in this country, that people must all become conformist. And we've seen how the rights of these personnel are being abused time without number, that these people are arrested, persecuted, and so on. So it's not about the individual. I have no look. If we had to tell the truth to each other,
I even feel like you're being patronizing because certainly in public service, the same way we try to hold Barrow accountable for some of the things that happen, Alamansa Kunda, in terms of corruption allegations or malpractices, public malpractice, among other things. I think it's also fairly legitimate to also question if the leader of the Gambia Police Force is deserving of any award or some recognition or even nomination, because if it is in your tenure that certain discretion or arbitrariness happens, then certainly I think that question is legitimate for people to ask, including the arrest of an individual who has been acquitted and discharged by a court of law. So,
let me honestly tell you that I know the IGP had no hand in that rearrest, whatever. There are powers and there are superior powers in this country. You know, the person who is the most disgusting, in my view, terrible person in Barrow's cabinet is basically his Minister of Interior. And this person had served as IGP in this country. Very condescending and compromising of the current IGP. Ye mira tilimbali ao tilimbali ala nyumbankoka okoto kella ka bara wala nyumbankoka. And Barrow knows it, and everybody in the country knows it. But Molka akoto follow whatever when because they fear people that they cannot tell them the truth. Moro, all the criminality and banditry in this country are masterminded by people in our uniform, or some of them who are just left the force, and of course they are giving other positions in the country. Those people masterminded the arrest of these persons. But IGP, the responsibility is not on the Minister of Interior to demand the arrest of anybody. It's on the soldiers of the IGP.
Yes.
So the IGP, in my view, should even arrest the Minister of Interior. Because beyond just the arrest of these persons, a lot of things are happening in this country that that person has a hand in. Tilimbali jama nyimbanko ka mol ke nyala kasi drong so nyimbanko ta tilini no tilino silo nin sartol ka simply because maybe our relatives or inimboda konyikele or inimboda one region or whatever, when in reality we know the things they are doing to the nation. These people are destroying this country beyond repair. They run vehicle companies when in reality they were just police officers. They actually mastermind the killing of their own men. They mastermind the arrest of people, and they continue to subjugate our people simply because they think they have position of authority. So that is why, in my view, the current IGP of the Gambia Police Force need to stand up to his grounds. He needs to stand up to his ground to ensure that the people that are even working within and around him, he needs to know who is right and who is wrong, because some of them are only there to compromise his leadership, and we cannot actually give accolades to such a leadership that under which that some of these things are happening. It has been a terrible institution, and this person had, in my view, taking over a very, 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 very retarded institution in terms of leadership that was completely compromised and destroyed because its former leaders were people who run drug cartels, deals in this country. So if you come into an institution like that,
yeah, I feel like all of what you're saying, I don't disagree with it. I think my only point of difference is the fact that the same way, when we established a TRRC, part of the problem that we figured out was because a lot of people were arguing, Jambele in order carried in, and we had to go execute it. And we totally negate the fact that, look, you have an option to either do it or not to do it. You are under no duty or no obligation to execute an unlawful order, right? You and I know that very well. And so I feel like the IGP of police always have an option. One, to either refuse to execute that order, or two, to actually walk away, resign in protest, and let the public know. Because Omar, I think also we need to interrogate that the problem in Gambia is because Mobia came here, need to be resign now. So instead of just having some level of spine and dignity and walking away, we want to continue being there because Kamira Minela may continue Nkasari means and all of the other opportunities. But I don't think it's right, because I don't, as much as you try to pin it on the interior and other just bunch of people, they are not really good people. The IGP, I think, also had to take some responsibility,
but
because if you want
again, if somebody who is the minister, in a way, there are other people that believe that this particular person as IGP was never a police officer, is dealing with the interior, is dealing with some other people within the police directly. And of course, before the IGP would know, they went on to execute a particular order. And then, of course, if I am the IGP and I came out to say, you know what, this is not right, should they actually rescind this decision? And it comes to that rescinding and or whatever. But the whole point is, I'm not even making any excuse for anybody. Until the whole point has been the police as an institution, from its former leadership to this inherited leadership of CD Mutar or whatever. I have nothing against the person, but the totality of the things that are happening within the institution, I have every problem with it, and I have every red flag towards it as per giving the police force as an institution an award. This award is not being given to CD Mutar as the person he is. It's basically as the head of the institution, and the head of the institution here, we are talking about what? The head of the Gambia Police Force. So that means the entire police force is being represented in this case. So whatever that we say the police are heroes, it trickles down all to the most junior person in the police force, including those who are torturing and maltreating people in the streets, including those who are actually arresting people and, of course, disobeying court orders, including people who are sending people back to Mile 2 without any court order. So why would I actually glorify people who disrespect our laws, who are expected to be people who should be abiding by the laws and, of course, the custodians of those laws, because they should be law enforcers. So So law enforcers turn out to be law breakers, and you want us to give them, accolades, and of course give them heroic awards in our country. What kind of a country are we turning into? So it's not about the person of the IGP, but it's about
Yeah.
the totality of the institution that is leading and the activities of the personnel under his command. So if that command responsibility trickles down from the eye because he's the head. So you cannot say that, oh, we are giving the award to the most junior person in the police force. If you are giving the police force, you give to its leadership. And the current leader there is IGP. That is why his name is there. So it's not because they like the person or the people think he's doing something extraordinary as an individual. No. It's the totality of the institution. That is why you look at the other heads that are on that, whatever, poster is the immigration and of course, the fire department. And they do not put their junior staff, they put the heads of the institution. So they are a reflection of those institutions. So if you are going to vote for these people or you are going to give them awards, you look at the totality of the activities of this institution towards the public and the delivery of service to the people of this country. Moro hani
Yeah.
ye nyala biti bi moko ko Gambia police force be nyaadi hani ye kuni sino le bala no ko moro tili ngonin to nyaada da mate jele tili maliani tajuden te yabe farin jele. So what the kachan no wala, and then people must have that guts to tell people the truth irrespective of who they think they are. So
Yeah.
it's not about the persons. I respect the IGP. Kabinda dungo wulura jang IGP barine narande dungo kuli because they went to, his uncle went to school with my dad's brother in the 80s in New York. So nimbari yala, I could sit and say, you know what, nahajite ala, ala uncle Ningol Bejang Pakol, we do our things all the way here. But when it comes to country, people need to distinguish the fact that relationships don't work when we are discussing matters of our republic.
Yeah.
And
Thank
when
you.
it comes to country, when people discuss subjects or topics, it's not about the individuals who are in those capacities, but it's the institution. So
Yeah.
people cannot, you cannot inject your personal feelings and emotions on institutions. Me yalong komoro. Banku dingol le kete jo wodo. Banku dingol la, institutional or what. You cannot personalize that.
Yeah. So
And for
thank you
me,
very
like,
much, Omar.
when it comes to the other side, one thing is I don't publicly criticize people I consider friends, even whereas you write something that I do not agree with. I would just read and say, okay, I form my opinion in my head and I just leave it at that. But you publicly attack me, and then anybody back in faculty I reciprocate. I have one thing in life: life is reciprocal. Respect for respect, any other thing for any other thing. But it's good to see. I think that looks like the lawyer guy. I like him. I
That's right.
listen to a lot
Yes.
of a lot of things. Is it Dabo or something? I'm not
Now
sure,
this
but
is Sarjo Barrow. Sarjo,
Barrow,
welcome.
Barrow, right,
Yes.
right, right,
Malmo.
right.
This is
So good
Omar
to see you,
Malmo
sir.
Sambou. Yes. So welcome to the show. Sarjo Yadil Medunkan Kachako and everything. And I was just gonna really pick
Thank you.
your brain on where Malmo ended in terms of, because I'm pretty sure even you're a lawyer of amazing experience, but you do know a little bit about awards too and what they mean, but also the distinction between public institutions and the figures that head those institutions. And I was wondering whether you have any opinion you want to share in terms of the police as an institution, and also sort of giving an award to the leadership of the police that is somewhat, it's not even somewhat, I think is complicit in terms of human rights violations that occur in the Gambia.
It's a tough decision, and then it depends. The classic law school answer, okay, karani mena, everything depends. Greetings to your viewers, mbadanga ni mole your content. But
Yes.
Mang Fenko Nyimberi, to be honest, I don't know the category where nominate come in, but I
Hmm.
think what I do so was security of the year personnel.
Hmm.
Now, in Igbo Didala, I will suppose, or there's some kind of presupposition that it's based on our service with the police or with the security institution, well, Igbo Didala, for whatever he have done for the institution, whether it's through reform or whatnot. Now, if you are giving him that award, it represents him and the institution he represents. It will bifurcate. No, you cannot do that because that award is predicated on the service he did for the institution. Now,
Yeah.
Monkey Head, he had no responsibility. It might not be much of a problem unless you not from a personal conduct. But if you sit at the head of an institution, come Gambia Benyame, there are two ways where you could critique the nomination, whether you agree with or not, and then whether he deserved that criticism that is directed to him. From my point of view, I think I read that from I'm not sure, but I think someone said in our group, and then I read it, whether Dr. Malmo's take. And then Malmo's argument in the reason why I agree with him from this point of view, the problems he in the race, Komi Usainu and then his sister Ninata Tola, they were acquitted by the court and then they were arrested and then it happened under the IGP's command. Hannah Fango Market personally, but he's the head of the institution. The young man in Osata or Combo Mealanko, a coroner's inquest just ended. Yeah, I understand. Ofanang, he passed away to a point where we have to set up a coroner's inquest. All these things happen under his watch. And then another issue I think he cited, I can't remember. All these things happen under his watch. Omar reservation has merit in the sense that all these independent act, Nikeda, even though the IGP as an individual at a market, or even let's assume, because I don't know the facts, that he's even unaware, it's not the fact that the conducts happen. Is when the conducts came to his light, the action he take to correct that will show the kind of leader he is. Now, let's start with the young man that passed away in that Combo village, police. The narrative that came out, because in Okada, internally from the police, you would know there will be a briefing, right? Especially something of this magnitude, someone actually died. So you would actually believe that the IGP will be briefed on this matter. So in briefing, the narrative came to you, and then you believe your men and women in uniform that go, whatever the story is. And then you believe that. And then all of a sudden, a coroner's inquest happened. It proved otherwise. Leadership require right away you issue a public statement, distance yourself from that information, fire the officers involved. Hold on 1 second. I'm gonna you move those things right away. That would show leadership happening. When Usainu and then our sister were rearrested, there are process to do that. You understand? And he left. If you are not involved and then you hear that is something serious because you are undermining court soul menkata, whether you agree with their decision or not. I sometimes disagree with our highest court, but you have to respect that decision. What leadership require is you do a press release, you let people know, this is not on your authority, you will investigate, and then you show leadership. Now, because none of those things happen, anytime these mistakes that Santo, you don't come out and then correct it, and then Melbourne Duma, they are not found wanting, to a point it has to lead to a public backlash for Chief Justice Coroner's inquest. The finding came out, and then even when that finding came out, we know it was handed to the police. No subsequent statement. It is not daring. You are always on the defensive, and then you expect people to separate your leadership from the institution you represent. So I think that's where he fell short, and then the criticism would have merit, and then people have real concern. Having said that, award them, nomination them. The people that are nominating these people, I'll give them the deference. They are independent. They think independently. They look at everything and then see who deserve it. But the man of fact, voting at those things, I don't know. But Malmola critiquing, it's fair. You cannot claim Nimbe in a personal capacity, because the conduct that happened every time issues happen, that would fall squarely on him. Had he separated himself, you punish them. You cannot unfairly blame, because we understand police is an institution. We came out of a dictatorship, and then there's a reform going on. How he could have separated himself from the institution he represents, if you want people to give credence to your leadership, would have been when the mistake happened with Usainu, you come out, acknowledge the mistakes, and then those responsible in Niata committed, it's not a command responsibility, you show leadership, because that was wrong. It's basically kidnapping. What happened? These people lied you under oath, and then there has to be some kind of disciplinary action, and then to assert and then reassert public's confidence in the law enforcement, you'll punish the new. Then I would have said Malmola critiquing is a little bit unfair, because he's unreasonably tying the conduct of the institution to a man who publicly denounced that, and then he is in a position to correct that action, and then he in fact is correcting it. So, but so you cannot separate it from the. So that's where with the facts known publicly, from the incidents mentambida. So I will agree with his submission. It actually makes sense. So it's going to be difficult to defend. I'm not saying you cannot have an opinion, but you can undermine or dilute his position I may raise.
Thank you very much, Sarjo. Just to add to that, too, Omar, before you come in, it's also like 2 police officers are still killed. We don't know who killed them. These are police officers from the state's security outfit. The police officers who died, their case is still pending. And we don't know where that case actually is. But we also know it's because of Useinu's acquittal and discharge. Now we have no idea who killed us because Usainu has been the one who has been pinned to have been responsible, and the courts have cleared him for that. So I feel as though there's just so many things that are pending with the police itself as an institution, such that this is somewhat taking us away from those very pertinent issues that we need answers for the purpose of public transparency and accountability. That's one. Secondly, too, in terms of the award generally, too, it just occurred to me just how much we centralize just so much on the heads, right? You want to tell me the IGP works harder than that police officer who is on the streets in Brikama, Silokang, and is trying to get the drivers to drive safely and Abela Kaito check and all those things? Why should it always be the top of the institutions for us to always recognize, but we forget the individuals who are in the middle level and the lower level? I thought that's always interesting too. But Malmo, please.
But that's basically what I'm trying to tell you. It's not the person of the IGP. Many a times when people want to give awards to institutions, they just personalize it to the person heading the institution. Otherwise, if you want to look at it, there are seasoned police officers who have been working in the police force for the last 35, 40 years. This person has probably left immigration and went to police less than 3 years. You know? How about the people who wore our uniform, went out there to defend, the colors of this country, and somebody walked from nowhere and killed them? Are they not deserving of national awards, even though they are no longer they are no more? Who is more deserving of a security award than a person who was killed in his line of duty? But again, even if this person should deserve this award, we're talking about 2 police officers who actually were stationed by the Gambia police force and got killed in their line of duty. But the people that came out to tell the nation what is not true is the same police. But even after telling us all those things that are in their totality untrue, a change of leadership happened there. The new leadership could have actually gone down to get to the bottom of that. Ask his former deputy, why did you say that you use codes to get this person when in reality that does not exist? We've seen in this country where, the deputy head of the police was subpoenaed to court. We've seen the national security advisor subpoenaed to court, the government spokesperson, and all of them dilly-dallying in court. That is publicly embarrassing. Iko tonya tije bare mini ya lonko wale be police nyadonka ya kam police le finda police le fata nyimbango kan e kon tolio ko tolie courts nyole use ka useno muda nyim police killing mini ya lonko they should be investigating the death of their own men, went out there to format Useno Bojang's phone. That in itself is enough not to give the police any accolade in this country. That the police could, in my view, criminally connive within themselves to get the phone of a suspect and to format it just to actually pin a particular crime on him, and then allege him of terrorism. The same police actually went to use Mama Ajabi and then came to court, compromised in a way or another with the Ministry of Justice to tell us that the audio that you said is the incriminating audio is lost, after transcribing it over 3 times at the police headquarters and noticing that there is nothing incriminating in it. So what exactly in this particular case was the interest of the police and the government in totality? The same government told us that the person that I grew up with in the community works for the UDP at Brikama Area Council. He's a member of the UDP. He was at Yankuba Dabo's court case. All of these things were said to us by the Gambia Police Force. That is the force we want to say that they are heroes. Even though when that was happening, this IGP was not there. But the police, for me, for the next 5 years, nothing heroic should be said of this police until meaningful reforms are done there, which I don't see happening. Moro, Nyingala Fondinkel that they are persecuting every day. Their only crime is to ask for accountability and transparency in our governance system. And then you don't want young people to ask questions about transparency and accountability? and you continue to, harass them, you continue to intimidate them, you continue to and then those inhuman treatments that are on camera every day. And you turn around and want to tell somebody in the village that, of course, this person is a hero, or this institution, actually, the way they're conducting themselves is quite heroic. If we cannot vilify the police, we cannot in any way glorify them at this point in time. And the way things are happening in the Gambia, I don't think they deserve that. And again, you see all these young women that are actually being killed at home, other people killed at their workplaces, other people killed in the streets. Who is responsible for our internal security? So in terms of security, the police are not securing the Gambia. Young people are just killed haphazardly in the streets of the Gambia. Again, in terms of, even territorial integrity, internal security, more jalle kana bantala bankul kan kana ka kumbembe ntola sarel kono in an attempt to get into the boats and go to this illegal migration. Where is our internal security? Mama ringol kadara lari la bungol kono mol kana ke file kordal kono je. Where is our internal security?
Yeah,
So
I think
all of these things in their totality, nobody seemed to care. You can tell me about reforms. What kind of reforms? Reforms should reflect in the realities of society, and society need to feel those reforms, and the impacts need to be felt by society. What impacts have you felt in terms of reforms from the police force, as in the ordinary person in the streets of the Gambia?
I
If it is
think
not worse today, it's
yeah.
not better.
As you're talking, I'm just remembering part of what Honorable Usain Odabo said. I think in his last interview, he said, "I think individual security is perhaps at an all-time low in the Gambia, but I think generally in terms of national security, in terms of our borders, I think the government has, I think, somewhat been doing fairly well." But Sadio, I also want to pick your brain on this as a last issue as we wrap up this particular topic before we jump to the next one. Is how significant is security sector reform? How important is it to ensure that we have a system of laws that are clear, that are that are concise, but they're also not contravening other laws that we have. On one hand, we know we have a constitution, and you have the Public Order Act, you have all of these things, and so there is almost a constant bottleneck of legal problems that we're facing, such that sometimes it's hard. The IGP you always hear we get an order from the top. So I think it will be really important if you can walk us through the importance of how, say, from your experience in the United States, how police, how institutions operate, the laws that guide them, how important they are, but not specifically to use what is here, but how do we make sure that we have a system in ours that is workable, that is fair, that is it also humanizes the people that it is created to serve, because I think that is extremely important.
Yeah, I don't think Bejantara is a yardstick anymore. In Bejantara, Barrow would win. Barrow is more of a Democrat. Yeah. Anyway, but airline security is a very complex area. And then I remember when I was doing undergrad, until I major was in criminal justice, mostly criminal justice policy. I remember undergrad kicker. Gambia police are one thing, if they want to do their job right. Policing rely a lot working with the community in tandem. Information from the community, good old policing, just information from the community. That's how they get it. It's not extraordinary. They rely on people to get information, detect crime, prevent crime. In your relationship, if it is broken, it becomes very difficult for police to do their job. But 9 out of 10 times, Gambia police, intelligence is, if they want to do things right way, intelligence is good. I genuinely believe that. And then in the dictatorship area, I cannot speak of that. But some of the things I experienced personally from people that are much older than me, the CID, or back in the days before the coup happened, or before security sector become more paranoid. Gambia police, they're really good at investigation. They may not have the equipment and the resources to do their work the way they wanted to, but when it comes to raw intelligence, they receive that. It's okay. No? Now, that presupposes they could get the right info. I still believe that to be true. The problem is right now, the relationship is broken to a point because of what we lived through the dark days, that the community do not trust the police, and then the police are not helping to build and repair that trust. And then Dr. Malmo example on side with the gala. if you are frustrating law-abiding citizens on things that are even non-issue, benign. Gala was doing a 1 year anniversary. These people have gone there, nobody even know what's happening. But police will they unnecessarily bring attention. I don't know, it's cost. But it's the system. Yeah, listen, why do you bring attention on yourself? So that goes to leadership. Police require reform because right now no one feel you are serving the constitution. Because I don't know how Gambia Police the academy is, but when I wanted to be a cadet officer with the NYPD, John J, we have to go through. They have those programs. It never pan out. But one thing I know, police here in academy, they learn 4th, 5th, and 6th Amendment. It's important. They have to know in order to interact with the people. So I also suppose Gambia, the fundamental rights, police are taught about that at the police academy. They teach about the fundamental rights, search, CISO, arrest, and then how to interact with people, basic human rights. So in your long year limitation long, not every order should be followed. There are lawful orders, unlawful orders. Yeah, understand what the system would protect you. Then they will do the right thing.
So the computer, move the money and make it back. Yep, that's better. Thank you.
Can you see?
Yes.
All right. What we keep seeing is police keep announcing, order come from the top, because no one know what the top is. Everyone is insecure. There is no clear process. So I think that would require actual reform within the security sector. But to a larger point, why problem of laws and orders. Gambia itself, that has nothing to do with the police, in as much as we need reform in the security sector. So we also need legal reform. The problem is most of our laws, we inherited from the colonial system. Na criminal statute, most of these laws, even when I had to do a research in the case, look at what I mean by private practice, this was very old. I came to realize that Nani Muslim Marriage Act, they call it Mohammedan Act. Can you imagine, found Ladino to will tell us how we should govern the marriage certificate? No, it's mind-boggling to read some of our legislations. They all predate even the first constitution. But to make matters worse, 96 Gambia fundamentally changed how we govern. Yeah, Gambia gave us a Republican constitution, and then he also gave. That's one thing, the guy is not my bread and butter. But what I know from a legal point of view, Gambia actually gave us judicial independence. I don't know that. I never even know that that was a thing. It's a brutal dictator, but the guy was smart enough to know what self-government means. Akakarane, he studied. That's what I genuinely believe. The guy reads. He learned on the job. So he gave us that. But the problem was most of the architecture of the law, they predate the constitution. Now, legal institutions, then among accountability and in reform, the laws we inherited, whether they are in compliance with the constitution we have. So we come back and then, it's like a la carte menu. We go and then pick one legislation. Okay, or sometimes if it is convenient, we maintain it. That's the problem. We have never truly audit our laws on the books. So the best reform may happen to war is the criminal justice reform, for lack of better word, is the Criminal Code Act and the Criminal Procedure Act, MENA 2025. And then that's the only new law Mayor Lonko in post-97 constitutions. At least we reformed that a little bit. But we still maintain the same architecture prior to 97. Like trial in Gambia, to Malmo's point, the reason why you have Usainu Nala's sister stay in prison for 2-3 years, because the Criminal Procedure Act is designed in such a way, it's not defendant-friendly. And then honeymoon not to me, kuma kesete daming to the this is, I disagree with it, but this is the understanding in Gambia. On the Gambia jurisprudence, on the procedure, almost some people, I don't want to overgeneralize. Maybe there are people who believe it's that's not the right way, but this is how people practice it. Most in our police in they don't have enough evidence. Yes, it kunology. And then the system would keep you locked. You cannot do anything. The first opportunity you have is a no-case submission, which would be at least maybe a year or two outside. You cannot even test the probable cause of that complaint. You cannot even test the sufficiency of that. That is wrong. The constitutional move, I fundamentally disagree with that. If I practice in Gambia, I would have filed motions to dismiss or even test probable cause because it's more charging a felony law. There's a difference between a reasonable suspicion so that can more muda. But in a complaint file, ingredients a little bit high. But because that's the practice we inherit. But even in 2025, it maintained the same system. So how do you expect those balance to change? So in even police will so we have to be somewhat brave, self-audit, accept that some things have to change, and then we change them. New one for level all the time. So I think Gambia reform is not only limited to police. It requires even legal reform in the sense that we need audits of our law to make sure they are in line with even the 97 Constitution amendments. But most importantly, they are true to modern times, and then they also give Banco Dingoli Lanyanto. But we are not talking about that. And then in as much as police reform, NOLA, the instrument that governs them is not reformed, it's going to be very difficult. Yeah, so I think that's the issue there.
I think last time Omar made an important point. How can we be in a democracy when we have a constitution that was dictatorial in every sense of it? I think that kind of puts a lot of it into perspective too. But Omar, if you want to share quickly any thoughts that you have, because I'm going to have Sarjo to walk us through kudol miyalonka kumadalembe dending immigration call in America then need to be able to so I think that's something to be but then Omar, if you have any thoughts you want to share.
I think that concludes on the point I made the last time. You cannot run a democracy on a dictatorial constitution. At the end of the day, just like Barrow continuously would brag to us, for saying, threatening the people. So it's like he's indirectly telling you, I could also use them. So, many a times we change leaders and we think, oh no, this person was a dictator. But what have we changed from the dictator's playbook? Because it's the same playbook that we're actually using. It's the same laws, the same constitution. So it's always of convenience. You actually inject those ones and where you feel, oh, it's not. So I think, we fantasize what we call a democracy. And often I keep telling people the so-called, New Gambia is basically, its strength lies in its vagueness. Well, I think many times when people see certain things happening, they would just jump and say, oh, this is not what we voted for. But what exactly have we voted for? We've seen a regime that was supposed to be primarily on reforms to put this country on a new setting, or of course on a new trajectory, and of course on a democratic pathway, functional democracy. But Gambia has a fantasized democracy which is not functional because there is no way in every sense of it that one can run a democracy on a dictatorial constitution. So I don't think the laws actually, they meet the test of time and the reality of our societies. They are not. There is a mismatch. And that mismatch is deliberate and intentional by the regime that is in place because it knows that those laws favors them against the citizenry. So until the citizens understand that power resides in the people and the people must actually champion that change and of course the desire for a new constitution that would actually be reflective of the realities of our society and modern day, rule. Otherwise, it will just be, Benyo Fala Kumabara, Nimi Nada Drong, Nimi Afewa Wondijo, Dami had actually, changed the law several times. Probably Barrow and others would also do the same. And then any other person who comes next, if you are not democratic and unrealistic to yourself or power greed, you will also do the same. Because it's always about people maneuvering to just entrench themselves in power. So, I think that's just my take on that. But thank you very much.
Yes. So thank you very much, Malmo, for sharing that. So Sauna, on the second issue, me alonka kumada babakele. Kabirin kunung. It's funny because namuso konyo ko fumoli amable legal practice in America bang. Kaya ko akonyo molbe call la molbe call lebe ni kala what do this kaya ko wallahi kaya ko I don't even know why. I guess because ninsajo nakiwa kendol and kendol maybe that's why I don't know, but also because I have a platform. But I think I understand what comes with that too. But I think for the past kabri nyimman sakunda kutona da America mo be yalo ne ko kujamal be kekan kujamal be falling kam fana what do is impossible to keep up. So kunung ikamin for policy kutole finda na mi yalo ko abe America immigration system especially in dolmi yalo ko bejang ani mo jama mi yalo ko bejang abe kujamal falling na in terms of ikamin for la adjustment of status malambo land la nyami mande kala but maybe Sadio bo explain no more. So wala nanga Sadio invite na jampra nanang ay mul makoy because ate experience jama sotole ay do ko kele kake loyati jan sanji jama mo da make ay Georgia fananke janne hani piya bo fon le pari afon bo falale ne o be lari nyadi le, but I think kumata baba kele pour mo ya faham mune be caring o policy nying ay mune mean anim fanang mune mala anafa fananti, all of that. Hopefully we'll ask some questions Malmo movement for him to help us walk us through that entire process. But Sarjo, please, by all means, feel free to go ahead.
Thank you. I usually can disclaimer, but let me know. In my personal capacity, Mamu represent. I'm actually speaking for myself, and then I'm not speaking for any institution. That's important because someone actually, this is not the right forum, but let me put that out there. And then brought my attention to an article in Gambia, Judge Barrow, opposition of the Kafunyoma. In as much as I would want to take credit, that wasn't me. Yeah, I understand it. So ngajele nakotoke kendele me fenko nyin safi, but somehow nantalo be pedulaji, I don't, at first it doesn't bother me that much, but someone also brought it to my attention in local language. Oh, I've seen Jojo la kwenye fenko kada, so now it's blurring the line. So that's why I wanted to make this. Even with that article, they want to understand that or member pedulka with the local language. I cannot take credit for something Mameko in as much as I may have my disagreement with Barola government, but that statement wasn't me. So I think it's important to at least correct that.
Yeah.
And at first, come back and I found Gali rejoined to do that. I speak a lot. I'm not afraid to speak, but I speak for myself. Yeah. So Kuma Tele. So of course, if I feel it's not like me journalist lecturer in Kamata Musula. I think yeah, free speech. Yeah, and then no, I'm not worried about that. Nias have been financing CDM no fine, and so those I think the antidote to free speech is more speech, but it's also important. Responsible leadership require you correct it. Yeah, I understand. I'm not faltering them, so but I just want to make sure that wasn't me. And then but I just wanted to put it out there. But I remember the next time you could take a pause.
Yeah.
But having said that, coming on, immigration's change. 2017, you understand, administration change. Until last year, when the Lake and Riley Act was enacted, and in the big beautiful bill, American immigration law substantively among the last time major changes was 1996 during the Clinton time, the Illegal Immigration and Immigrant Responsibility Act. Only immigration falling fundamentally. Before that was the primary immigration al Qurano, the main act in the 50s. So 80s, a couple of changes, early 91, 92 change that 96 was the most fundamental change. Kabra bought out 9/11 then a 2000 Act Real ID Act. So maybe the one certain driver's license yote tamano la kodeng. Loi dunta 2005 le pour yakabal state so they push back pour ko fang change fang pour ka make so momo be nyim banko kanjam fang ani suite rango ta soto no la ni kayite table mon lawful status soto. So state so do be balanta they push back anyway because yalla jang dual system le soto. Ben kaytol dile la lambe suite la men federal ta so federal fane mene ke no fine be timely dilala le integre na ma ke fanante na federal system will use no la wala airport wol ni fen ko la ideal te valid no la world post office no federal institutional. So for finally, I think last year, like at the final phase out, they made almost 20 years. So finally, when the sign real ID bacon. So what in the last major change until Cabrillo American of Boso Kono staff right Ukrainian, and then before that, your American knows Musonian fast. So what they can really act in the program America Benjamin traditionally may and Europe fata back. Niko ko America ni fututa jang kaito e kaso jende bukata patu banta. But not the all right here. All right, thank you. And then ni futu daja coming America niko immigration. I'm talking about legal lawful immigration. Abenyameng America la immigration law among falen sila luleba pour ka kaito so niko jamba karo nanga diamola pour more understand green card. You understand there are only basically 5 routes: family based, when you have parents maybe file come. You have adult children over 21 will be file count, and then you have siblings, brothers and sisters, they are filing you. Family petitions. And then you have employment route. Employer is either sponsoring you with the categories of visas. You understand? They are there. Those things are there. And then Ning Ukotaje, then you have what we call protection basis, coming asylum or within the country. Refugee system begin that's outside, but asylum also could be another route. Then we have what we call special immigrants. Those are the people who do embassy for a certain number of years, or my parents also don't know siblings, SID, what we call special immigrant juvenile visas, and then America parts will create more. And then you also have these religious visas coming, pastoral church imams, so they are all under that. You understand? And then finally, lottery, green card lottery. These are the 5 routes. Unlike other countries, merit system bigele. America at any given point, somebody has to sponsor you, either a family or masakunda. When it's refugee asylum, masakunda will sponsor. When it's not that, family or maybe employer. There is a sponsorship. I'm a merit point system. Sorry, 1 second.
No worries. Go for it. Omar.
Oro. Egala bango male mulu aku dala soro. Ndamo kondamo kalam molo. Tolo kamira be. Tolo be railway do ko and tolo ka
Omar,
you be tangala nyamen tolo be ko do,
the months man, you gotta keep up, bro. You gotta keep up.
So whatever take on, you understand it. So the kunung, to come back to your point, yesterday basically menketa traditionally America bejame ni dunta jang lawfully. How does that mean? In visa le dunta, which mean at some point in Atala ye dan control ke pundaka moy dundi nang de ye kalamata make dunta nam funtan la back way or whatnot. Let me put it that way, niko back way. Lua to ni nata jang, and then you are considered an immediate relative or mominity. Come ite you are parent of a US citizen or US citizen quality US citizen mola ding like me you're under 21. You understand? Or itemu spouse lady, whether husband or a wife of a US citizen. Lua ko ni dunta na lawfully la force do okata lawfully ni visa na rangi admit near kaito file amanjare finti ibe kaito button lajan. Unlike Europe, that's what distinguishes America mostly from Pankudulka. Ibe la kaito file lajan yaso lajan. But every kaito is a discretionary form of relief. In as much as you have a legal right to apply for it, lua ko hani qualified by gibele for you are deserving of discretion. Let's say nata jam hani banko dingo futu, but ite mo multi ala ko do crime commit lebe jail, ye around 10-5 years. Yes, legally you meet the requirement. But the kaito la soto yung privileged. Bela balance in la positive and negative kajibe, whether you deserve to get our paper. You are not entitled to it. The only kaito me alam ko is a mandatory relief. All I'm saying the withholding the coming moment asylum apply. Asylum is discretionary because it relates to green card. Hani qualified tala, let's say in a certain crime because of that. What they call serious non-political crime. Ye bala. Because yalna ko ni murundi yabe man to rosol laje. Lua ko withholding o mandatory provision it mo murundi nola because we don't want refoulement. So it was sort of like. But in kaitidol pay, almost every other paperwork is discretionary form of relief. So that's what it is. So you lemme for lua men nata kuno, it will call that discretion ying. It will la miralor. Congress lua men landi. It means the default should be momo eta kaito yining banta. They are not saying ko lua ve ko it will la miralor. Mele loi de la député bon. The plan was momo nyata in the embassy to well default need. Even though loi ko categories of people is apply no le bijam. So what they are saying in not so many words is nite mo me ala ko inata student ole mutija inata be 4 years ke kanya. Within that 4 years hani you fell in love ini mo fututa ye kaito file enyanti la karam be banale ni jita ye muria yeta Dakar ye visa ta na mbrana ko Nimu Dr. Malmo, let's say, Dr. Malmo has expertise or skills in certain area. New York Besularingal, MTA. Let's sponsor Dr. Malmo H1B diala follow. Let's say man straight up green card. Or Dr. Malmo was student of Jam, graduate, we need enough skills. So we are going to sponsor you for green card. According to New Luala Fenko, remember I know I'll petition of file Malmo. Na a granta eta dakarayata instead malmo itrajabe do ko la America be na fala ala green card apply even though ala dungo kata jam lawfully. So that's what they are trying to change. So they want to make it as a default promote banta lino jafe murnam. But come for jealousy for come I don't want to like. There's a reason why ni mo be to apply kanjang. Let me put it in analogy. Yelun tang sota na tela punkono come jambe nyame generally almost all state. Mona they give a city la punkono after 30 days. Lua moje as a guest anymore. They are basically like they have some rights. Most city la punkono fatam beta sanyi tiltan sabat. They are not only visitors anymore. Nibe fintele could be you have to follow certain process. So I don't want to go anywhere. I don't want to, but I just want to give you that way. So I certain protection sort of like that. It ain't like a yafa one. But the moment we banta be dani rola, lua nyantole dire si kodol keno. They have basically no right. Ni tilimbali atala banta. They have no right to a forum here to complain. Because now we be complain, they better than for more make it. So any more they yeah, and then you could kukela. I still on social media, you're complaining, okay. But basically, Lua Bungal Messi Marco, it is same most of the water because it is trouble of knowledge for that one. But if a banko can jump, Lua and to do delay, more have a code killer, and Lua Safa, and it okay no. So that's the route news. So I have pick and choose let. So come in, most likely have a challenge. But and take a for no more than wrong. Ninte follow the Intelabandi, kudo for a minute. So basically it's just new cycle. Come this is a hot topic in the election, and then a lot will happen. Is it a little bit alarming? Yes. And then what it only means is saying if you are going to apply for Kaito Green Card, it's high important experienced attorney, immigration attorney, and I consult you understand what the risks are. But most importantly, substantive law, you still have protections. Because you misinformation that would be even more dangerous than the announcement. Yeah. So basically, that's where we
Malmo, you looks like your question also you have a Sergeant in car.
Yeah, ndal after mentioning kala okay. Ning ayata mari because jang kai ka dimol on different levels, different durations here and there. Near green card so me yalong maybe sanyo follow. He'll have to offer in a four for every findela bandalena muruna. Or he'll have to bola green card to passport for your muruna. Or it's just your initial application that you'd have to go out and probably wait. You go murate in Alessia Bangoka. Or near the because I know Europe, I was still a permanent resident of a European country. But with that, I had to go back to Gambia. I was not really living there. I was in the Gambia. And the application had to come to the Gambia. Go to the Belgian embassy in Dakar. They send the whole file to Belgium, take a decision, send it back to Dakar, and then I have to travel to Belgium, go to their town hall, you go to DMs and all of that. They do everything. But there is no way you can make any complaints. Look, we are in your country, stay there. So if they do that, is it going to be at the initial stage of your application or at every level of your application? You got to be,
No, the initial level. The initial level, because once Yalan Jambakaro technically, Yalan that's a good point. Jambakaro will be 2 years of conditional residency, but not permanent resident. I tell people this is the biggest misnomer. There's nothing permanent about permanent residency. I don't know why they name it that way. But Lua Menkaje, because in terms of 80s, the Marriage Amendment Act Menkadano. So they believe maybe models into relationship just to put a fast one on Masakundaka Jambakaro. So a way to cut that Momola Futuo, the Bekaito can through Futuo Lakai. Futuo is less than Sanjifu Lebekaito, we are going to give you a conditional residency. Ibajale, no Sanjifu Mina Bana. And then in Ilamuso Belebe assign a protocol condition on your remove pre permanent residency in your son. Yeah, understand. That way they could vet the marriage, it was bona fide and then they intend to build a life together. But they're also aware of spouse also used as a leverage, killer spouse don't pattern. So Lua also Lua it also leave it out. Okay. Nia Lonko, it tell us no more you have to tajare because I'll have to put that over your head. We are going to create, in 2000, they created what they call VAWA. Because in Canada, it is like US citizens of permanent residency, spousal paternity, financially, they abuse, emotionally, or even physically. ite kunola because you have to stay in that toxic relationship for Sanjifla because you felt like a new body there's no hope. So in another vow petition or kije bajala hani football by sentinel. Then they in fact create more waivers. Nim football banta but don't football kono ale kila ale come it was a good faith marriage but I enter for Sabala. Law allow you to self-petition yellow conditional bondage, but they have to at least look back at the time you live together for that marriage is bona fide. So there are a lot of nuances out there coming in, but now the football time with Sanjay Fulala, they don't put those restrictions. You automatically get your permanent residency. There is no conditional basis. But was sila follow nya kama ndoke sala follow kila time when aproka jamba kero solo left to ito policy coming mo ya mutefe al bebe fintila bantale. Yeah, understand it, and then you get it for the first time. Then you admit them as a permanent resident. But there are laws for Amelia along any element tankala kaido of the Tinyale Bulu. Mume along you were admitted as a permanent resident. There are certain waivers they are not available to you. So a market wrong is either a mirror, but there are coming a major case Munoz the Department of State make it last year Supreme Court decision to like it's very consequential. Eko Banco Dingo doesn't have a constitutional due process right to have their spouse in the United States.
Wow.
So yeah, 9 second. First second decision a parent has a fundamental right to the care, growth, and everything of their child, but you know most spouse-led. The whole issue was whether there is a due process right to have their spouse with them in the United States. Supreme Court, as a very clear, they answer it 5-3, no. So, you have no forum to the court.
Wow.
It's telling no. So this is not long last time this is not you jump off into the right now.
So with the application of Nyeni, is where is it going? Is it going to apply retrospectively to a lot of, because now Jamal Kaito be pending ring and all of that? How is the applicability going to be like?
And also Sergeant Nisa Kacha Ilalafa discretion Jimfanang. So you essentially when we so sign or discretion for them apply to more me along with Bela Kaito Adunta be able to connect on to get a decision on their case.
That's any major policy change in law. It doesn't go retroactive.
Yes.
Yeah. The problem is green card in your file. Coming on, I can find a green card, but I thought about the legal time, but let's call it green card. Near green card file, until you approve, rather, it's a continuing application. It's a continuing application. Just like Nico Melkanin Sanji Tanjambakaro cancellation of remote for Sanji Tang, if they fit in the Layala Luai, you could cancel your removal. Now, it's a continuing application. At the time adjudication the laws in place that will apply. So you can for imafako nyilua kaitol men file already be pending handing be adjudicate la manta new policy at like they are silent about it. They just tell their adjudicators go ntol ngamira default nyanda kala bantal de bari te kaito file no la banta nyata nena manke luwa nena how could you know that? So let's say never apply. Actually, coming like this is how it's supposed to go. They are not saying go imam qualify can apply because Congress has already spoken on this issue. You understand? In fact, Congress knows about this. Congress call from if you do the bank you are a spouse of a US citizen, a parent of a US citizen, a child of a US citizen. Need to jang kaitol. You understand? Hanila kaito expired, you are not in status as long as you entered here lawfully. You do work illegally from kaiti table. Is a kind of apply on the motive in the land, and there is no bar, there is no waiver because family unification the kuliaro bit. So near Lua from the section of 245 Menka Foiko, Kaito Nyatan in the damning. I exceptional Kijele on 245C. All right, thank you, you got it. All right, so I exceptional Kijele and in those things, you understand. So, but for whatever reason, we left the quality change sign. All right. Thank you.
Gas dari flow benajang. Omar nala bigalo. Saja sana nala galo.
Pinda bejam fari wala la follow.
I'll be right back.
Kadi muka mo ino.
I know. Nakadi she likes to be on the show, man.
Oh, she does. She does. But entang aku gilna jandol la jang. I have a lot of engineers many along ko ikaponying Southeast Asia.
Uh,
So some of them will tell you, "Pur kanna fenko renew, I have to go out, I have to go to India, and fenko ketang, I'm like, bro, why can't you do that over here? So Dobije and Dabuka understand why some of those people need to go. So it's like, okay, and Tamal coming for them, but anyway, figure it
yeah,
out.
yeah.
You
And I
know?
think sometimes I'm Sadio would talk about this a little bit too.
Yeah.
But I think sometimes Kela to adjust your status to a different sort of visa, it requires you put a Findiana and so all of
Oh.
them and even though you're police for them think I think about what come back for them because what's gonna happen is now can you imagine in H1HB million ko ning Southeast Asia no and in India no million ko katara ng AI and in tech be do ko la wol ila fa ka fo ko wolbe sa ni adjustment of style ila fa fin la le na nanja that's gonna be a significant economic damage to the United States so so they're
What,
working
what,
it
what,
back.
what, that's why I'm thinking dollar industry found to like, literally, if you look at heavy civil in America, it's run by people that are not like it's mostly European and Spanish, and most of these engineers are Indian or whatever. So the industry is such that it can ikaw kahit di wala nyama. So nila after follow ko like the whole industry needs to go out for status adjustment and come back in. Even though we are having those difficulties, you have a couple of Indian engineers and ila kahit be fengka at the same time, and they all need to go out and come back. That's already a burden.
It is.
you
It
know
is.
and and
It
and
is.
and not only does it have just economic impacts on the infrastructure, but also even the business, because in terms of timeline, what I mean, I don't know because it's like you're going to prolong this job because of some of these paperwork and all of that. So even cities and states would definitely challenge some of these things. Komoro Alben Tabdela Kujamal Lalaman.
Yeah, ngalang ko robe dat la de banna. But if about what come back in a way saying I think message in kala na too. You call me along ko like you like many more me for
Like
content. They
now,
bring a significant
na
economic.
boss le left them boss around the follow. Yeah.
But yeah, Sadio maybe fenge kan don jani bidan num fana wolum nyinde ko ngaji le fana ko I think they since Gabriel police in Bondi, they're trying to walk back or clarify certain things. And
Oh yeah,
significant
yeah.
economic benefit is one issue, especially ni mol mi yalon ko they're into tech but ning AI ila for will be finti. Yet ni la for adjustment of status it bank can pray nananjang. That's going to be adversely um, it's going to affect our economy a lot in this country. So Malong, to what extent would that apply to Molmi Along Kofanang? If you just have an ordinary job, a monkey high tech job or high earning job, you also know, but you still have a pending case, Mialanko, it relates to adjustment of status.
Yeah, like, anyway, ma ko mol kana concern the announcement okay. But come here immigration, Supreme Court found it is due as one of the most complex area of law next to bankruptcy here. It's purely code based. Every year you have over 70,000 regulations smell with like any area. You understand? Immigration is very complex. Any map of people. Here one week time you felt like you get lost. You have to learn again. It's highly codified, and then it interact with the constitutional law, with national security law at all time. Those two intersections. Law it will change. You cannot impute a requirement congressman menkije, even though they have a plenary power. Discretion to break. Let me put it this way. Nick Matako discretion. The issue is not coming for you qualified like a kaito ninja. The question is whether you are deserving of discretion kajamba karodundijam. It will call the default thing to remember luada dala yemenke like intent moment momo ya nyini ya yena. Even though lua in black and white code, this category of people will serve line ojan. It will fake will like intent world, world. So you go back to what we call congressional report, congressional research, and debate, speech, those things are there. We know what's there. I don't want to get into that. It's highly technical. So the issue is coming is just Damol and Cheslam. Ninde feko Omar Len Kitty Taylor. Omar maybe is a little bit more conservative or liberal, depending on the I want to create an interpretation issue. So better damning. Ningalam ko komi dipite or until Sunday no like a let me create an interpretation issue. Come luana tanya nyame eta uye kuke me alanko lua ko itenyin kenora. There is a clear law for itenyin kenora. For instance, when it comes to men jam, yalang America birthrightly ni jam regardless of your parents in la family. Ye banko di yasoro. That's the constitutional interpretation. The issue came in 1892. Supreme Court kumata ko yes issue momo wuro da ndo mo fen ko the Chinese soul ala parents soul manke kaiti inata during the rail walk level. Yofo 50 years later nya chala nyako no ndo ngamre deputy men mean ndo courts dol fa molo just like Roe v. Wade. You understand? Constitution ko neta je la ji jako right to abortion sort of under the privacy right yake work. So you code do sita la you panel do code hani wal hakilo yene ne do mandenker wal ma afrenku the American constitution ma fale mbake the same court sol sita jane kuma ta ko mo fingol manke among nyantu soto o let's forget about that because we have reconstruction fenko amendments, the 14th, 15th and 16th amendment. But let's just come to Brown v. Board of Education. Before that, we have Plessy v. Ferguson, separate but equal.
Yeah.
One day, see the judge like constitution. No, it's perfectly okay. We feel into what the Jackson. Don't not echo. Hey, no, what a king. Had a yate. Buku kilo. So, omuluala naso let come when it comes to the prison. We understand that. But in this case, no one is fighting for new qualified that can apply. The question is, how do you evaluate discretion? Nyulko it will fake lua de dala la miraro mo be nyanta kala bantal just because inata jan saye kay do dundi jam. For instance, let's say back to Dr. Malmola question milialam ko kay to fango dundi before you policy change police like you are going to make that as a very significant factor kay do dundi instead of going back when they have no notice whatsoever than any other equity. So they are saying you have to show you are deserving of that discretion in an extraordinary circumstance. You proof. You are contributing to the economy. You cannot put something on a discretion, balancing Tesla. Case in point, I don't want to get too philosophical, but it happened before in asylum context. You understand? In the 70s, there's a decision, a board decision, matter of Salim. Let's say Sierra Leone, refugee, just to put it in context. We know in America, Nico asylum and refugee, they mean different things legally. Within the four borders of the US, asylum apply. Outside refugee resettlement, so let's say Bay recognize there's a problem going on in Sierra Leone. Banco Bay agreed to new refugee status so dunia banku palme fanno ko nga talanyo ke momo e ma ko resettle Canada ite ni mo nangam ta America ite ni ta but coming ngaje hani Gambia Sierra Leone maybe now I understand why they were there because malon no one advert because ngane ko they were waiting for resettlement wala ne bije kablo be keka so I see other years say kabri ngal luwa am so wo be ke kambar ko be nafaren ko maybe people running it over there ite fe ko ibuka ke ku ibuka ta silola ite pasite ko masilota mano ñu ko dana jaay tay sa mo sono batun drokal ak ma da ko look ñu bëka ñi keku mel fon ya deserve for refugee li ba di la modo le ba wa fi la whatever guy came and I kind of file the guy yes nga ne ko bata ñu banko de ñanda ka asala mo so ko na daje jojo kay ko nta di de la because ite imanson system ko batuna the orderly process of mulkana nyame ye ñi menke that's a negative discretion ayo weigh heavily ayabale kay to that was the finding. The panel no, it's one single factor. You are going to cut out entirely population deserving of asylum. It's one single especially prosecution standard Benyame. So you're stuck. You understand? So what a factor you would look at it in all the other FEMCO. Just because I'm on line of battle. And then that might be one factor. Severity of persecution, family reunification. That is more on a balance. You understand? Positive discretion that this one. It one single factor. So that law has been settled in the asylum area. But in policy, later decision on maker. The decision actually itself was a board decision, matter of blast. Yala yole side. But you have to look at the facts. This case is an outlier. The monkey the norm. Family abandoned. Another visa nyinina ama misrepresentation because yala manikol kame for mana buka kono deme ama for cancel ko inta de murana so he did not do anything me alke ba for misrepresentation like was smart kami me nyinin kai ma jabe you less is more ama foi kom katale so kabrana ta jangay kaito file futura la futu bam America jala muso bulajana dingulu ay muso do futu ja way kaito file bara be in removal proceeding kabra futata jojo maso as part of the proceeding record men finta testimony nying comme Omar ya fanya me froyandi so joya ila infutu banelga So ya realize ko atala muso bulale dingol bula ke support ama fenke so way jojo kamfa akaje amake so inila muso man kuya amake comme you are separated albita kan divorce le ite adura rekete ya filiji nin dingol e mantra support kam akaye ko okay I know you are deserving of kakaito sort of, but discretion means that's a serious negative discretion. I'm not going to reward you for destroying a family. Okay. So akaye ko that's a severe negative discretion. Even though you musu dole futu jang, inyanda kakaito so akaye ninge balance in the totality. Ila negative discretion is yata nyindole. So manta deal. So case for the that's the only context in adjustment green card case is half na musu implementa. But covering both from the diamla or according to the diamla or look, this is the extreme outlier. Ordinarily, ni me alan ko ni la muso la football banda because football kasi la ka banda. Ko bela mul doka. Ni wal nata unless there is some other thing ni wala kaito apply ba so that. But in this case, in do la case wo kai. Jojo men kan person wala we are not going to reward that. But in the name see kuma da ko that's the fem ko nyin. So but that's the decision. Come like ni mari ngane ko come political everything like. Ko H1B na da jani ko so we know how that works. So ani Gambia political ka kiji nyame jafana ka political kan.
Yeah.
Understand? Let me put it that way. Things will come more for like andang atela bana ina. Probably another fenke dole mina ko de ngatala nyu kulu masla wala ko de. Let me put it that way. You know.
Yes, Omar, come on.
I can get you.
Yes. Do you have another question, or I should fire?
Oh, you can go ahead. You can go. And mang kuja malong on it. But okay, ngai Brahman yun kanum fenala jang. Like I could only speak of the industry that I know. We have a lot of Indian, manga Gambian ulti, but Indian civil engineers. And many a times, though, inika benne, intermittent, I need to go back to do my either visa or whatever. Why do you need to go back all the way to your country to do whatever to come back in here? Or I need to, na permit is ending and I need to get out to go and do that. So are those different visa categories that you need to get out of this country and come back in? And dolbe jenga fanam people ika kairol dundinyado la nyaman in between they want to change to this EBU, whatever, into different forms. So how does that work? And within the time you want to change it through a different process. Would you now with this law go outside?
Well, it already sort of is a wala. Ni be green card la file. Alam ko mila mi puli niko visa. Visa is a generic term, but it has two categories. Non-immigrant me along ko luwa ya jela ko ite mulunta multi. It's not permanent. Inata jiberola at some point ibe murala. Wala student visa, the B1, B2 visa, regardless of Allah si ala be jamfala nyoti. Maybe visitors most carry work. Student also can up to sanji nani, up to sanji lulu. Is it karamala jana for sanji tang? But honey be lunta yalem komi be sailor. That's the promise yin komi be murale. You have immigrant visas where you intend to come in kana si jana lafta jana kala yard. So it depends on the visa category women. So in moja mala be mela ko kabonang Asian country they are highly good at STEM area. So they might start with H1B, which is a non-immigrant visa. It has a dual intent. You understand? Not a new but in a but in why for because coming back to family la kulia in football. Congress ko melia lonko ibe kaito so kan through football la or family. Hani overstate la kaito banta isi tujane la kaito so manjare fendi. But employer imo nyanto diwal. You understand? Ni employer la mudi nata nyim B1 B2 la or H1 ibo lo mina panna ila company la file la if you want to get green card consistently you must maintain lawful status at all time. So ni ate la nyi domina bande ma extensions wala jama ka fendi eta nyi do batum because ni dua ko ni tara and they only give you a grace period of 179 days, what they call non-technical violation. Ni tambita wala faita kaito sotno la menaka la bala tibe kudo la kala. So wala ne kaje dolo ka findi. Or dolo bije ya that in to non-immigrant they are transition to immigrant, but ilani underlying status mina bankan nole ima fendo soto o yo isaje dole mo karambo ngota fam. Or dole they do what they call APT optional practical training to keep them in status in hybrid. Jamal bije kaje mo student already company lieta il after lottery visa la wifely H1B which is non-immigrant. But lottery there's a number of visa come some con. Let's say more Kemeluli a lottery file and then they only have spot for 40 people. Unless in even certain industries come certain area me exceptional dealer. You understand? So it's a lottery in Ganye. It's two knowledge. You have to leave Hani Dukula from left dealer because that H1B visa you have to be selected in that lottery. You may select ye for 50 yet I batum banta for the next time or another system when you file it, because no one be overstay, or you have to find another way for a transition. You can always change your status from one to another. So it depends on immigration history movement, and then what strategies they are looking at, or for the transition kind of from a non-immigrant visa in temporarily immigrant status, those wait period are there. And then another ke komi immediate family again komi ngani men fale musul futu wala kulia congress unlimited visa like wait period there's always a visa available, but every other category employers there's a limit on the number of visa member dealer per annum. Let's say near ceiling a million this year for legal migration, no number rita wala nekaje the visas they retrogress. Like for Gambian standard ni mu permanent resident di jambakare tio ye mo futu hani musolem o kewa ye mo futu itamu jambakare tio di manke banko dingoti maybe the process could take anywhere between 2 to 5 years, because now visas have retrogressed. They only have 235 or 275,000 visas are allocated per annum for that level of visas. Malayalam green card holder lemati ibe kemal ni dingol file come under 21. They have less than 300,000 visa allocated for that. So a new number in Rita, they have to wait until next year. So citizen or unlimited number of visas, because Congress you're clear and banko dingo nyantuya. So they don't have to wait at all. The question is application being approved or what you might. Wala fan hani bijam is also no jeni nata nasilol. And then they also put other way hani mela ko nata duma silol ko mi traditionally the kaito sort no jeni nata ka fintile. Niemo futu mi alam ko is in the military or law enforcement, because ye jam ye service kuliandele, they give you what they call parole in place. Service man visa batumpanta, they create a legal fiction. So you can parole apply no ye parole prospectively as if komi watu name na yo deal police kind of file no just if in visa dunda. And then all other incentive like malalam ko okay nibe active duty military lua ko el application number process la within 30 days. Because service la kuliani, those kind of things. Depends on because immigration is complicated. It's like a quagmire, and then
So, Sarjo, we have some comments and questions in the comment. Then be able to a few of those, but I have my own personal question left in which is, say for example, Momi Alonko, a fruit a few days ago, Nim policy not a finti. Well, not even a food. A food is already approved because new process or yal na kakinyaming. Ni food momi yal citizen you go through. You come in for I-130 you file new approved. Then you also file for your status new for adjust. So level in so momi yal food approved already. So wolu for be findela bang eta bota daming say for example bota Gambia la puleta la kaito file, or now they are barred completely from doing that because now for people to understand that.
Ibe ban ito yale mafoko ita final. Ekole ko ni file nimbe decision okala when it comes to discretion me busala because it out ya file ja obekala heavy discretionary negative discretionary factor. So more balance la with what other equities it means so ja. Oh yeah, your family so ja so are you working too? Those things if I give a balancing test lab, and then ndebe men for la mole juma ibe fintela ja depend you understand immigration is highly fluid. But to your question, niatre mari fuduta banko dingole. You understand? And then I-130 file me anako just classify I-130 mu petition de kafa ko loi recognize karimu na musoleti on ke malamati legally on dingole nyiti on gululalem. That's what it is, to create a visa number for you. Oman jamba karodila. So to move from that non-immigrant status kata immigrant status me jamba karodi ika adjustment of application file or green card application. So basically, I-130 is just a vehicle for you understand. So that's how it is. So an ideal scenario would be they file contemporaneously because law is embodied. But let's say assemble telemon kodoni solo ye petition on the file. So after na file, you will sit realistically under this policy. Any immigration lawyers like situation okay, what do I have going on for me here? Am I someone may have been productive in the community, other than the only negative discretion coming masakundako na decision to file my paperwork here instead nga batum banta outside of that negative discretion, because it could be as a negative discretionary factor and they were going to make it very high. Aside from that, are there any other negative discretionary factor going on for me? For instance, through a visa, that's okay. Am I someone who violated the terms of my visa? Am I someone me alan ko nga criminal history sort of jan? Am I someone me alan ko masakundala be balundi kan I have no honor? So you looked at it and then stack it and then see, you know, those kind of decisions. That's what you're going to see. Do I think not positive is more than my negative? So handling with their policy in yantaka discretional exercise favorably in my case, yana adjustment in grant. Or ni make loi mu nyantile dinansi kele no menajam. Nila bago sike findet. Ita kumata okay mbatu ngake banka. Mulbo kamelon kama these are some of the things they don't tell you. Let's say inata jang ining it kabrita minajang inata with a visitor's visa. You carry world dealer. You have 6 months to stay not to exceed 6 months. It can be that wala jang. Now you start accruing what we call unlawful presence. Luwala karo. Near unlawful present accrue until 1 year, from 180 days, 6 months to 1 year. Ni sangara fintita, you trigger what they call a mandatory 3-year bar to murunola bankoka. If you are unlawfully present for more than a year, ni fintita, you automatically trigger a 10-year bar. Ite murunola jam. So you need a more long yarn. There's a lot of booby traps. Ite ma memfaham wala nang ko imari ni lawyer dia. Wala fi ko meka mol si jandi be isilale fin. So wala be ke kan ni fintita be sila jela sanjitang. Or you have to apply for a waiver outside, which could take a year or two. Janiba grant. 2014 now, Obama a waiver dunda. Look, futuo kulia dala family reunification. Motitano sila banta nala muso or na kema be jamfari nyolaka waiver kewa. So say be menekela, ibe waiver apply la later silinja waiver but for any waiver approved. Iba later ila tani the tambila locally locum for la murna. Josikata visa kule topato. You understand? So those options are there. But nite bago sikaraki tate maila ko assess. Probably lo finto famale bad na la faite muruno la sakaniata komi some negative interaction sort of with law enforcement. And then Wolfana they might compound some other issues ita mello.
Okay, well, so some comments. What if you file concurrently? I answer if you file concurrently, I think it's the same. They're still going to apply the discretion, negative against positive. You know, so ngala yo answer already. So ndita Teriko, if you're my ndingo fudu da like in 2019 and after marriage, I was approved, but not I for the it's still the same. I think I will Sarjo answer just watch the video. I think.
Mandangan yung ngaro min sorry Ibrahim. Wala yung negative and positive. I feel like a but ngalon na mol dole bejang, dole bejang, of course, mo jama kalafika do ko. But dole bejele kalafika system wala use. Ay ta camera ko ebe system will use can when in reality the system is just ignoring you but looking at you. And lumbe sila drone they could just put all that out there. Imala video ko la ka kuru ra system o bolu wala. Imala fika din wala karamo yo era system ko be kete. Arre la ko be pending with this negative and positive. Ni wala ni nya ko na era man productive nyumbang ko ka. What general advice would you give to people? Mini along ko, akole ara nya de ka bonam bandale kanana njang and then ikala fi kom benefit all drone la at all times. What would be the general advice to the people, not just Gambian but generally mol mini along ko era kay do ko
Ni is jato be kendaring and then ya jata kendaya soro. So it doesn't have to be anything. My advice would be I do work because Hannah Makenyin loyalty since last year for more factory. Sign ye not the green card for more page war damanem. Page 9 I get page war. A lot's changed. Saying it's like almost 20 pages. Occasional member they are also assessing what we call public charge. America ko nimbe kaito dile la ngadi tela ite bina ilala masa kundala ka instead of being productive you be into liability. You are inadmissible. Manyana kakaito dia. Panama ke refugee di mele alam kaya bondi woleje. So eko formo do jake yini ka personal mena fo be do ko le la asset sur sa jamba kalo le ko yini ka dia assessing la public charge. Kadini nga kaito dila you would have access to certain benefits. Food stamp ni fen ko. So ni dia dati for the same fam. Let's say bela kaito baton kan do ko be wulite do ko la o dinde on be bulu be Medicaid le o Medicare and isa tano le mo keno masakunda ba be kekete wala tamantala fen ko la. You have to prove because the burden is on you to soko hey ndete kala liability and iba fono la moy nyaadi le ndete kele kan dunoti ni fam folo ila dunota bari ni la duno bente bule ka fanya ko non te kala dunoti bari ngal ne ko kam nyini mbuli ni o so da fa saying a waji bole ken ka ke balonde ave kola
Somebody is also asking visa suspension kuonyim fanang whether there's anything meaningful in the order. I don't think so, but yeah.
No.
Yeah.
Kilo we here in court, but basically it's the same thing. And then
Yeah.
ngane banku dole na better than that just fenkola example ning
Yeah.
we'll see next month yalang the 180 days be banda so reassessment yembojala.
Okay. Well, finally, last issue I want to pick each of your brains on is Senegal Nanebol, Jamining Usman Sonko Mfon Kuruma. Finally, I think what a lot of people have prophesized have come to life. Sonko has been his service has been terminated by Jamai Fai. Two brothers that we know started the struggle together, went to jail together 10 days before the elections. They came out of jail and they in fact won the elections together. Jamai became president, Sonko became the vice president. But as of Friday, announcement came that the cabinet has been dissolved, the government has been dissolved, and also Sonko has been relieved of his duty. What are your thoughts?
The Senegal political mbuka follow, but this is what I do know. And then let me put it this way. Ning sonko ning jomai, from my point of view, this is how I see things. Nka jele sonko la comment so do jele, in our local media share some of the frustration he have. But let's say we all know Sonko was for past leader in Adela Fenkomena. We know where they came here, but I'm everything. Nin Sonko ning jomai, I would suppose brothership be temale, and then ye meng sell it to the constituents and then to the Senegalese national is nin natambe 1, 2, 3, 4 like that's our idea.
Mm-hmm.
They get to the palace, Jamai Bije, and then Sonko Bano. Nin see that in our first meeting because Italy, Senegal structure and governance structure is a little bit different. It's not like coming UK, me along the prime minister function is someone a little bit heavy. Senegal president so you need to see that in that first cabinet meeting, I would tell a supposition is they have close relationship before anything dunje. Need see them these are our agendas. You understand? Nyantaka 1, 2, 3, 4 like it because that's what we talked about. And then Jamaica go, hey, Kabrin Dunta Nanjang, these are the other information me along we don't know. And then I have it. You understand? To me, we are only going to do 1 and 2 with A and B. No, I don't sign up for that. I disagree. And then no matter how difficult it is with the information we have. It's the head of government, president. I would bring the party because parliament sort of the leaders, the MLBJ will have that discussion. Ni balante konyako is your government, it's your legacy. This is how you sitting it. From my point of view, what I would have been more prudent, I would have resigned from my position. I'll come back to PASTEF. This is what we campaign on. This is what we agreed. This is what he wants to do. And then I cannot be married to a government with that policy when that's not our agenda. So I am out. We debate parliament, parliament because I'm prime minister. So until parliament will make Soko, Natala, any binara, we are not going to support that. We are for 1 and 2. That's what we'll campaign. And then I'll do my public thank-you. What I find unacceptable here from working in all kind of institutions, restaurant, one thing I know is you cannot disagree. Let's say Sonko, Joma is at fault. I'm putting this, Joma is the fault. Everything coming, Sonko is the good guy here. What is, from my point of view, unacceptable, especially in leadership position? You cannot disagree with him. He might resign, but every day, conflicts. You undermine him. Other ministries and other agencies would be like, well, why should we care? They're not going to so at some point in time it undermines your leadership because people think that you are not decisive or you cannot make decisions or Sonko is the leader. It would force you to act even if you don't want to act. To me, Sonko war, that's just it's just unacceptable. Even at employee places, you could be the most brilliant guy. If they think you are not personable or you cannot bring the team together, it became promote because the kind of productivity would be low. Because in like a dog, you need to know how to get the best out of people. You understand? So that's my the public from Sonko vehemently disagreeing. You have the party, everybody knows that. So I don't know if you think there's something fundamentally wrong and then you are making these public outbursts. It behooves me to come resign. You understand? You have the support. If you believe in your project, resign. Ntebe nyine kala ni nyine nyi fenkeno. But you cannot continue to do that. Ibe presidency nyi undermine na. You don't show me what the justifications are, and then Nyimbe in a position of leadership, you leave him that way because it undermines him. That's not leadership. Moto canola anywhere, regardless of right or wrong. So in Yatra committee, okay, I'm pushing him to fire me in order to get sympathy vote because I don't know how politics works. But for me, if I am an electorate, you have some questions questions you have to answer for me in order to get that vote from me. You're not going to get a sympathy vote because I want to understand why you continue to marry to that system if you think there's a fundamental disagreement regarding how the government should be run, and let's say he doesn't give you the way you want to do things, and then you cannot work with him. It's incompatible. The prudent thing is ni be frayala. Be fanyala jele because you are getting the privilege, but you also castigating the government. You either agree, everybody would agree on everything, but on the fundamentals, niata komi wala issue nyindi. Then I can understand. But niata manke the fundamental principle. Let's say Jomai is doing the project they are asked for, but the issue is some other things. Malalamko is unrelated to governance and impersonal. I think that's just immaturity from both sides. But we wouldn't know, or maybe some kind of I don't know because I don't follow their politics.
You know, Omar, it seems to me like one of the fundamental problems or difference that they both have, Jomai and Sonko, is the issue of debt crisis that Senegal is facing. I think almost over 132% debt to their GDP ratio. And Sonko has his ways of how to tackle that, which is different from how Jomai wanted to handle that. And so they have ongoing conversations with international financial institutions, including the IMF, and part of that is coming, I think, first week of June as well, because obviously Sonko does not hide away from the fact that he is not interested in so much of pandering to the West, and this sort of radical populist figure that is also like pretty eminent in Africa that aligns a lot with, say, the EFF in South Africa. And, this idea that I think in many ways, a lot of people, why he's so popular is because he wants things to be done our African way, which begs the question, what is the African way? How do we make sure that African economies are independent of the West, that we are not relying on foreign donors and sponsorship for us to do certain projects that we have? But the problem Senegal is facing right now is they inherited a debt of over, I think, 1.3 billion or something that is not entirely theirs. It's from Macky Sall that they discovered. So they have a problem with their economy right now. And how they both want to go about it, I think, is a huge problem. But Mamo, I want to ask you specifically, you see, Gambian community is also divided on this. And I think rightfully so, because Senegal is so close to us and we're so connected to them in many ways. But what does this mean to Gambians? Especially when people have these conversations, how do they relate it to what happened between, say, Adama Barrow and Dabo, for example, in our Gambian context?
I think for the most part, you see, I see politics from a different view, and more so when it comes to leadership. If you look at how lions live, they live in territorial protection. There are no two male lions in one territory, and there cannot be two male lions in one territory. Simply, in political terms, you cannot have two presidents of a nation. No matter how you come together as, we are coming together as a team or whatever, one has to lead and one had to allow the other to lead. You can have a joint project and your views might be different, but at some point one had to allow the other to actually, rule. You cannot have two rulers at a time. That's one thing. But one thing that I view the Senegalese political, context is that, they inherited a lot from Maki, which is bad in terms of debts here and there. But the problem is specifically and squarely on Jomai's intention to retain the position for the next term. That's one fundamental problem that these two have. Jomai had already left Pastef. Since he came to power, he was already trying to consolidate, just like Barrow started. Barrow and UDP, the problem is UDP thought they were helping Barrow. When Barrow, in his own view, that was what was happening. Yeah. So Sonko and Joma is such that, okay, I believe in this person, let him do whatever, but you cannot be in the government. And of course, you're publicly criticizing the government that you are head of. Because in Senegalese system, the prime minister is literally, the one who is running the show. So if you are running that government and you believe the approach and the method that the president wants is not what works for you, I would agree with Sarjo that you rather leave. But again, he felt that no, I brought this government into place and we were supposed to follow the pattern of our project. And then if you actually deviate from the project, it becomes our responsibility. Because remember, during their campaign, they said, if you leave the project, we will try to bring you back on the project because you are not here to actually rule on your personal ideas. It's on what we all
That's right.
agreed on. It's on the project. But nobody rules on a project of the collective. A leader must always exist. And that leader at one point will have discretional rights to say, you know what, this is how I want it, and that is how it will go. Even though I don't agree with it, sometimes it happens that way. But the whole point is that John Mai has, in my view, deviated from the positive agenda, the agreement that brought him to power. And now he's, more so looking into consolidating himself, associated himself with the people that were subjugating, their party members. And of course, the people of, Sonko, and Sonko as in a person too. So there is no way you can tell me, just like Barrow, going to bed with APRC.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. So even though in the Gambian context, people try to look at it as, oh no, it's just like what Barrow did to the UDP is very different. Of course, Dabo was in prison. Barrow, a coalition brought him here and there, but that was supposed to be a transition of 3 years. Even though other people told us that he could stay for 5 years, but other people also went down and told Barrow you could stay beyond 5 years. So that is exactly a replica of what is happening in Senegal. Now, the opposition that was ousted is hijacking the change. Hijacking in the sense that they're telling, Joma, you can stay beyond just this 5 years that these people want you because they are your party members. You can have a second term. Now, this is what happened to Barrow. People told him, oh, no, 3 years. And all of a sudden, UDP said, no, you can do 5 years. Other people made him believe that you can do 10 and beyond. And the APRC, in a way or another, Sirinjai left that party deliberately and intentionally. And it is my view that that was, collaboratively done with Fabakari and others. Leave the party, go claim some association with this person, and bring him to us. And then that partnership is what get the guy a second term. And that is why, in my view, literally the APRC runs the government. Because APRC runs the parliament. Yeah. And then if CD could say that I tell Barrow, who to fire and who to promote and who not to, that is clear to all of us that who runs the government. So now you could see the people that Joma is meeting now, the former prime minister of Macky Sall, the person that is leading his coalition is Macky Sall's former prime minister as well. And of course was, leading Macky Sall's campaign, for parliament not long ago. They had a fallout simply because he was not made, the speaker of the assembly. Like all other people that are part of that, Jomai coalition are from the Mackey's, camp. So in short, Mackey's camp is hijacking government. And Sonko, of course, like you said, the reason why he would deliberately not resign, there are issues of principle, issues of professionalism, and of course, issues of politics. Ningam fonyo, it will be his campaign kavoko habaratele fonya nyortal. But about until I mansa kundaloni, better laja na folungo min na embai, but ofana man Senegal makwede. But politically it would help him because mobe kamin fa komoro if I mean that I buke boto. Alon tolla yale be wonyama, you have to put socio-cultural context to it. Ntela tamu nyindimba mbambola mfango to nyadi. Na nata roman die jambondi jang. So the whole point now is firing Sonko was Sonko's deliberate making. If you listen to his speech in the National Assembly yesterday, I was following that. There were two things. Jomai was deliberately frustrating Sonko to resign. And Sonko actually battled him out in the game by deliberately provoking him in some of his statements at the assembly yesterday. And that brought his, sacking. And of course, the solution of the government. But again, now, what would happen is Sonko knows he has the majority in parliament. And now you could tell from the beginning, Jomai wanted that coalition to go into parliament. So that tells you that from the beginning, this guy was already calculating. These people were playing mind games on each other from the get-go. I am already president. How do I consolidate? You're president, you're supposed to be here for a period and you got to be out. You become president by default. So you cannot remain. So there have been that political game among these people. It was just a chess game. So for Sonko, I will not resign for people to say, "Ha, but I tell you, Raimaja come father la boda je, nyumo si fala mati, ate amera ku ate mim for water killer." But again, while this person is dining and whining with the opposition that were subjugating Sonko, jailing him and accusing of all kind of things, that is not really something that Pastef would want to see. But again, firing even some of his closest associates from government is another thing that he would definitely not like.
Yeah.
And where people are accused of corruption and Sonko publicly talked about it, and the president said, "Damn it, I don't care." So all of those things were just compounding issues that were, leading Pastef to that, very angry point that, what, this guy does not want to focus on the project. So he's forcing us in a different light to resign, and we will not give him that privilege. So we will stay until he asks us out. I think politically that is smart. In terms of development and realistically for the nation's progress, it's not.
Yeah.
But then at the end of the day, Sonko get what he wanted. Because those yesterday, like if you listen to him and some of the things he was saying, you cannot say that to the president that you're working under as the prime minister. You're supposed to come and defend that, government. And if you believe the government is doing right, where you believe it's not doing right, you resign. But where you did not resign and you come to the assembly and said, "I disagreed with the president on this and this. And on this and this, I think the president made a mistake. On this and this, I think the president is wrong." Cannot do that.
Yeah.
There is no way
Well,
I can work for a
yeah.
company and then go out and say, "You know what, my project executives are all wrong and everything they're doing is not right."
They'll
That
fire
is
you.
deliberately calling for my firing. So Sonko
Insubordination,
was
yes.
deliberately calling for his firing, while the president did not want to take the responsibility of ntela nga bay molia na foko, nga jamfaleke. So president ke boru nun jamfa kumulla. Bara nyi adun di jamfa kumuldo. So now everybody is like, "Ah boy, ki work la nyamu jamfa lalet." And then politically, when that is mentioned of, when that tag is on your name, it becomes very difficult to cleanse that. So now he will rely on Maki's people to seek his re-election. And the Senegalese people will always reflect on how he came to power.
Yeah.
So those were the things. The political dynamics were things that Sonko understood very well and had to play his cards in that light. Not to say "Ntele nyorda, but I tell him bondije."
Yeah.
That is why when he came to the assembly, it was intentional to speak of the ills within the government that he was serving, so that this guy could actually be compelled to fire him. Because Jomai's intention was never to fire him, was to leave him and to continue to frustrate him within the system.
Okay.
So those were the two things at play.
Sarjo, finally, if we can wrap up with you, I'm curious to ask you. You're a lawyer. You're not a politician. In fact, most lawyers that I know, they try to completely stay away from that territory. But it's also not surprising that most presidents around the world are also lawyers. So I think there is a great correlation between law and politics. And so in parliamentary systems, for example, I think one could make the case that coalitions, for the most part, work greatly. Like you take an example of, which is a crazy example for me to even mention, but Israel is another example where, the system that they have, but the coalitions work very well. Parliament, you go to in England as well, and most countries that have a parliamentary system, I think for the most part it works. But I think in our context, that has mostly a predominantly presidential system of government. We've seen time and again where partnerships are created, coalitions are created with the sole purpose of having access to power or becoming the incumbent. And then once they settle into power, this crack starts to show up. And our case is not, Gambian case is a case in point, for example, and also now we see Senegal. And so I'm curious to ask you, is there anything that is different to, say, a parliamentary system to a presidential system, such that, one of them, coalitions could work, and on the other hand, in a presidential system, it's just so hard for coalitions to work. And we have December elections coming. You have all of these conversations that are ongoing, and we know for sure, because at the end of the day, what ends up happening is the country suffers. Nothing gets done. Senegal currently is experiencing an astronomical problem of debt, and they cannot figure out a way because their politicians are fighting. So the ordinary persons who don't have access to power continue to struggle while politicians fight among themselves. So how important is it for us to learn from these lessons such that we don't replicate the same mistake that we did during the 2016 coalition conversations?
It's going to be difficult, but kami it requires civic education, promoting awareness in sort of. I am not too. I don't fancy parliamentary system of government. And then at its core, if things are done right, it's supposed to be a representative government, meaning the people have power even more than the courts. Well, in UK system, Parliament can in fact overrule their Supreme Court. They don't have a constitutional democracy or constitutional supremacy. Supreme Court feel a law and Parliament a law that they override. They can do that because at the core of it, they believe the people should have that power to do that. I'm a fan of a constitutional republic. The problem is even with a constitutional republic, the Africa Benjamin, we give too much power to the executive. There is no balance. And then even personally, I would admit, we never take National Assembly to be an important house. I think Gambia, we never realized the work they can do, how important they are in holding the president to check until it is late. And then the fifth legislature for me in Gambia was a wake-up call. This idea of coming, okay, we always are fighting and thinking, the right person get president. We always forget to ask the question, represent Deputy Bunkon. I think that's where the conversation should focus on. My thinking is a lot of these university students, they are graduating. Employ them, in fact, encourage them. People that actually know what is happening. We cannot continue to afford to have people in the house. But you need to know your role. Na constitution ko deputy la doku follow la fundamental fenko mukan luwale safe. Wala mu itala doku. But 9 out of every 10 laws that came to parliament masakunda la kasafeti. Omar Nyanda Kante check and balance into accountability. But Omar la kasafenti rules all me alanka abeng audit la nyame. Like I'm going to give my agenda to him. It's insane. So Parliament cried about this thing. I think that's where we have this anomaly. And then in Senegal, it goes to the same thing. President has the power to dissolve a parliament. That's insane. That should never happen. President could dissolve that resources. Why would that happen? What we should have a recall system, come Gambia constitution foresee, where there is a threshold. If they are not happy with you, they recall you. Hey, California, you can recall the governor. And also that's how he came into power. Ni left the president to borrow their word. If we even want, you can put that in the Fenko. We have 30% of the electorate, the voter register want to recall the president. Okay, fine, we can do that. If we think you're not doing right, we cannot wait for another 5 years. But President Kafenko dissolved, that's where the problem is. But Deputy Bungol Mele president hold to account, even in Gambia system. It doesn't matter who came in coalition. If they want to renege on their powers, it's a technology. But the people that can hold them to account is Deputy Bungo. You understand? But you need people there to understand their role is to serve as check and balance to the government. Congress is calling you with all the system when you know so baby you are going to testify in front of a committee. It can make it on the show, TV, C-SPAN, those and but the moment they put you under oath, you can better under oath. Long, they know what that means if you're under oath. They can come back to you. What time when everybody have amnesia? I don't recall. I don't remember. But can you come back in Jordan? Or left color in camera? It can forward and it can dance me. Those are two different things. So Gambia, it's the same thing. National Assembly have this enormous power, but I don't even think they know they have it to put the president at check. Make so you understand? Coming like what happened with the movement for inquiry on the Jane Commission, that was commendable. But they could have done that. You know, they have the power to censor ministers, to require the ministers to be fired. You also the president of they have a lot of power. And then they asked for independence in 2018. The National Assembly Service Act passed. National Assembly say loyal certainly. They're supposed to have policy makers, they're supposed to have economists. Meaning one thing I would want to see Gambia. ye bilo nati nanje. I want to see from our lawmakers more clear see akuma sakunda ko okay aligning legislation below. How much job will it create? Budget into how much would it add on the budget? Abe mum benefit lena. And then we go, yeah, you have congressional budget office. Every bill is get legislated. Kabirinte, I gave off Kabirinte Pitol Kafayal and the private member bill natinola because I certain. It's a document the constitution like who tell you are going to foot that bill? They actually believe they're supposed to pay for their own private member bill. Like Masakunda bill like an anobi. Okay, you want to where do you see that line? Because there is no orientation, even for Hamro. And then the people that's supposed to train them kafeko, that's your role. So they are of the idea that Masakunda bilol menati Masakunda nyantole sponsor. But neither Sita as it been to represent come from Dankunku. Your idea you want to bring it, you have to pay for it. Are you crazy? That's literally your job definition. Nima Safeno, go to the office, ni loyal bijafo ko nyina muntela idea to left nyina nadla. Make it a policy for me. And then bring the bill. You get support. And this whole idea of ministerial kabilo nang même in the constitutional if reform is going to happen, no bill should come from the executive. All bills should come from National Assembly. Bill number 1. Nimu president, you have an agenda. Ela policy left akala luwat. Go to your majority leader, like I introduce. I bring Obama ning signature bill left and I'll help her. Read lela wala natina. Introduce. You could work behind the scene and left like a language make it. That's perfectly okay. Politics level. But I did deputy level they review it, they scrutinize it, understand. But every time they have to bring it to you, they have to explain it to you because and then the minister they bamboozle you. You don't even understand the terms that are there. Debate is very fast. So it's going to be very difficult put a president Keno in check because everyone think ima role you long. You don't how many times do we see deputy come in committee calling parastatals, talking to them in or bringing ministers, having public hearing, scrutinize you. We don't see that. So I think that's where it's changed, even for Gambia. You could keep doing cosmetic changes unless institutionally movement, you start doing that. There will be this power imbalance where the executive will always be powerful. And then most importantly, too, Gambia we all think we see government as a mean to an end, a way out. When private sector should be that. So Gambia, the inverse is true. So molka dum masakunda camera abekala naful theory. Masakunda doko mu service later because you see something that is wrong, you want to change it, and then you want to provide for your people. But in nita kadunje yamra wala nyante kala naful theory. It's going to be difficult to keep that masakunda in. And then so that require a very different orientation.
Yeah. Anyway, it's been over 2 hours. I don't want to keep any of you longer. Omar Benta Siri Mutoko na Abuda Dokudla and Sarjo didn't know but I just want to quickly tell both of you, say to both of you, thank you so much for your time. Thank you very much for your contributions. Sarjo, Omar and I appreciate you being here. I'm sure Omar is finally excited to meet you also virtually. I'll put you guys in touch too. That's part of the things that I like to do. But Sarjo, Abaraka Baba Kamen, we really, really appreciate you being here.
Thank you so much, Alabaraka. Thank you, Malmo, and nice meeting you virtually.
Yeah, nice talking to you, man. Alabaraka,
Yeah, Alabaraka, all of our audience as well. You guys don't forget to subscribe on our YouTube Dialectic Space podcast and share the interview as well. Thank you all very much. You all have a wonderful Saturday. Bye.